Hi, I'm Carrie Davidson. I'm the Move Well Fitness Manager here at UK Health and Wellness, and today we're going to be talking about moving mindfully. So here's our agenda for today. There are 4 main sections that we're going to talk about. I'll throw in a few extra things, but our intentions for exercise, those are self-planned intentions, intentional exercise planning, which is a bit different, intentional movement, and then modes of movement that benefit your resiliency to stress, anxiety, and burnout. So first of all, we need to meet our brain chemicals. So these are the 4 brain chemicals that are associated with positive feelings: oxytocin, endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin. Oxytocin is the chemical that's released when mamas have babies or when mamas are feeding babies for the first time. It's a bonding chemical, helps us to build trust. This also is a chemical that can be released during a workout if you're working out in a group, or if you have a common sport interest. So if you're playing a game of pickup basketball, oxytocin is what is released to the brain, the feel-good chemical. Endorphins are there for pain relief and survival. So these are expressed when we laugh, when we cry, when we learn new movements, and even during stretching. Stretching is a feel-good exercise that releases endorphins, so things like yoga or Pilates or Tai Chi or just generalized stretching can help us to release some of these endorphins. Dopamine is our motivation and rewards chemical. So when we set a goal and we achieve that goal, then that box gets checked. That is a dopamine release, a little dopamine hit. So we're going to talk today about releasing some realistic, or setting some realistic goals, actions, and achievements. And then serotonin is the chemical that is associated with safety and respect. So enjoying the stages of mindfulness, appreciating the good effect that we have on others, letting go of control and habits can all give us one of those serotonin hits. So first of all, let's just dive right in with intentions for exercise. So what do you want to accomplish? What is your intention for exercise? And this is a sort of a big umbrella and what we want to talk about today. So do you want to run until you pass out? Do you want to exercise so hard that you feel terrible and you can't recover? Or is it more about exercising and moving in a way that makes us feel good? So instead of the black and white picture there, it's more like the bottom picture there. So we want our exercise and our movement to leave us feeling happy and positive. So it's not necessarily the load, it's the way that we carry it, and that's what that little box says there. So let's talk about setting some realistic goals. You guys have probably all heard about SMART goals in the past. So here's one. I'm going to work out 5 days a week in the gym for an hour. And I'd like to say, yeah, right. That's a great goal. And if you can do that, that's amazing. But let's talk about realistic goals that really work in our life. So maybe it's more realistic to set a step goal of 6,000 steps per day or 10,000 steps per day. Maybe it's more realistic to say, I'm going to practice some stretching or some sun salutations for 15 minutes in the morning, as opposed to going to the gym 5 days a week for an hour and getting sweaty. So that is a perception that we have sometimes of exercise, that it doesn't count if we're not getting sweaty and need a shower and making an all-out effort. And that's a perception that we oftentimes need to change. So realistic goals can be smaller, should work with our life if it works in our schedule and it works with our work and it works with our home. Those are more realistic goals, and it is okay to make those changes. And when we do those smaller changes, we have those smaller goals, we hit our 6,000 steps a day or our 10,000 steps a day, that's when those dopamine hits. So that's one of those times where our brain chemicals are going to help us. And once we get that hit, our body's going to want more of that. So we're going to continue to do those things so that we can have those happy chemicals be released again and again. So if we zoom in just a little bit to our intentions for exercise session by session, then we get a little bit more of those chemicals released. So let's think about maybe a yoga session or some just gentle stretches that we're going to be doing in the office, at the desk. So for example, maybe our intention for this next 10 minutes in this day for this exercise session is to do chest openers, heart openers. We're ready to give and receive love. This is an example that we have here on the slides. And these are some stretches or some yoga poses that would lend itself to these things. So whatever the goal is, whether it's a cardio goal, a strength goal, it doesn't necessarily matter, but it's important to set one of those session by session goals. So we know that once we have done that, then it's a serotonin release, as well as dopamine, because we do get that reward and that motivation and goal, but then we also get that sense of safety and we get that sense of respect for ourselves that we've done something that we set out to do. So that's zooming in a little bit further. One of the things that I'm going to talk about now as we zoom out is intentional exercise planning. So just because we set this goal, just because we say we're going to get 10,000 steps a day, just because we say we're going to practice for 15 minutes in the morning, doesn't make it happen. So in order to make it happen, we have to take the steps that are going to make it happen. So for example, pack your gym bag. If you're going to go to the gym, pack your bag. One of the things that I like to do and that I like to tell people is that if I had to every morning pack my lunch, pack my gym bag, and do 15 things before I can get out the door, something's not going to happen, and it's probably going to be this. So one of the things that I try to do is pack for a week. Pack everything in a gym bag that I think I might need, whether I'm going to swim or I'm going to go to the gym or I'm just going to take a walk outside and I just need shoes, whatever it's going to be. I pack it all in a bag for the week. I take it in on Monday, then I've got it there for the week. So I've done the planning, and then I've also done the action, and then there are no excuses for that week for not doing those things. Maybe it's just you're going to walk. You're going to walk at lunch. Put your shoes in the car. Leave a pair of tennis shoes in the car. Leave them under the seat. That way they're always there, and if you get an extra 10 minutes, put those shoes on, go for a walk. Maybe it's a matter of planning, so putting it in your calendar, scheduling it, maybe calling a babysitter to come and watch the kids or something like that while you go to a class that you want to go to, but make those steps happen. Another good tip is to pay in advance. If you pay for a class, if you pay for a sports league, you have some skin in the game and you're more likely to make that happen. So go ahead and do those planning things. So here's some really realistic ways, some realistic things that could happen for you to get more exercise in during the day. So remember when I said it doesn't have to be a matter of getting sweaty, needing a shower, going to the gym. It doesn't have to happen in a gymnasium. It doesn't have to mean that we're sweaty for an hour. It doesn't have to mean any of those things, maybe some of those preconceived notions that we have about exercise. So let's take those and throw them out and talk about ways that we can have a mantra of more activity. I am an active person. So when it's time for a meeting across campus and you think, man, I got to go across campus, I have to go to this meeting, tell yourself, yeah, I get to walk. I get some steps in. I get to walk across campus. So it's a change in our mindset to do some of this. And a little by little, a little becomes a lot. That's what the slide there says. So here's some realistic tips. Park in the orange lot. It is easy to find a parking place further away than what you typically park. So if you're used to parking next to your building or relatively close to your building, park on the opposite side of campus. That's an easy way to build in 5 or 10 minutes of extra movement in your day. When you go to the grocery store or you go shopping or you go to the mall, park in the very last spot. Don't be the person who drives around the lot for 10 or 15 minutes looking for the closest spot. Park in the farthest away spot that you can possibly find. And then once you get in, walk all the way around the store before you put anything in the cart. Before you pick up anything, before you stop, walk all the way around the store and get some extra steps in. Use the bathroom that's furthest away from your office. So if you have one right outside your door, but you also have one downstairs, upstairs, in a different building that's close by, use that one. Use the one that's furthest away. It's going to give you a good excuse to stand up and to walk around. Now, we all could use a little less email. I could use a little less email. I'm sure you can use a little less email. So instead of sending documents or sending emails to your coworkers, get up and make that personal connection. So we can, instead of wasting trees, maybe even, we can walk over to our neighbor, we could walk over to our coworker, we could have a walking meeting, we can have a standing meeting. So that can be an understood thing in your department. It could be an understood thing in your staff meetings, that it's okay to stand up, it's okay to walk, it's okay to move around. So those are all things that are just in our head that we need to change our perception of. Move your printer to a different office or a different location. So this is one that I practice. My printer is in a different building. So if I want to print something and go get it, then I have to absolutely take about 500 steps to go get it and come back to my office. Another good option is to find some auditory cues or some things that happen every day that you just do sort of on autopilot to be a trigger for things that you want to try. So for example, when your phone rings, stand up. That's an auditory cue, and it's going to invade our senses so that we can change what we're doing. It's a natural pause in our day. So whether that's a visual thing, an auditory thing, find a cue in your day, something that you automatically do, and it's going to trigger you to think of a new thing to do. So it's going to trigger you to do some sort of physical activity, stand up, sit down, move around, do something that you haven't been doing in the past. So let's talk about some intentional movement for just a minute. So maybe we only have 10 minutes and we want to get some movement in. We have 10 or 15 minutes. Then all we're doing is our five movements. We're going to do 5 major muscle group exercises. We're going to walk for 5 or 10 minutes. We're going to do stretching for 5 or 10 minutes. Whatever time that we have, let's do that. But one of the things that we need to get in tune with is to listen to our body. So if we've been sitting at a computer, for example, for an hour, we're working on a report, we're working on a project, we're working on a task, and we've been in that forward reach motion, our head is coming forward, then we need to listen to our body. We need to undo the patterns that we've been sitting in and take some time to pull the shoulders back, to bring the head back into alignment, to do the opposite of what we have been doing. If we've been standing, there's a good amount of people who are using standing desks these days, and those are great. But if we've been standing for a while, maybe it's time to sit. If we've been sitting a while, maybe it's time to stand. So listen to our body. Whatever habits that we tend to fall into, these are the things that we want to bring balance to. We want to do sort of the opposite. The other thing that we want to remember is that when we are doing an exercise, we want to do exercises in balance. So if we do it on the right, we want to do it on the left. If we do it for the front of the body, we want to do it for the back of the body. So you have a picture there of a knee joint, and that is just to represent that we want balance in exercise. We want balance in our program. So if we're going to work the top of our leg above the knee, then we want to work the back. So if we're working the quads, we want to work the hamstrings. We want to bring balance to that joint so that we have a healthy joint. And it's the same no matter if we're talking about one specific joint, or if we're talking about our bodies in general, or if we're talking about our exercise in general. So we want balance in those things that we do. And so I have listed for you here the 5 basic movement patterns that we typically try to get into. So these are movement patterns that happen every day. When you open doors, when you close doors, when you lift things up, when you pick things up, we do these things every day. So if we are not athletes, then we want to train for life. We want to train for the things that we do every day. Every day I open a door, and that's just like a row exercise. Every day I close a door, that's just like a bench press exercise. So we want to mimic the things that we do every day when we're exercising and when we're practicing these things in the gym, training for our life. So if we don't have more than 10-15 minutes, we can still go do, even in our office, we don't even have to be in a gym, we can still get these 5 basic movement patterns in. A push, a pull, a hip hinge, so bending over, bending down, something with one leg that requires like walking where we have one leg in front of the other, and then some sort of rotation. So these are things that we do every single day, all day long, without even thinking about them. So if you have questions about what this should look like for you, or undoing some of those patterns that you have, maybe from sitting for long periods of time or standing for long periods of time, then you can always go onto your LiveWell dashboard. You can make an appointment with us. We're happy to talk to you and happy to help you bring some of these balance exercises into your daily routine, even if you never leave the office. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure that we understand, that this is just the tip of the iceberg and that you can get in deeper if that's something that you're interested in doing. So there has been lots of research on the effects of exercise on stress, what chemicals are involved, how it helps, what the mechanisms are. And at the end of this, you'll see a slide that has some resources there for you to look up further research if that's something that you're interested in doing. I just listed some of the main highlights here for cardiovascular exercise. So cardiovascular exercise is anything where we're going to be running, walking, swimming, jogging, dancing, biking, any of those things where we're moving large muscles for a long period of time, getting our heart rate up, a cardiorespiratory exercise. So it improves our mood. So again, coming back to those brain chemicals that we talked about at the beginning, so it releases endorphins. If you've ever experienced a runner's high, this is exactly what we're talking about. It increases our feelings of self-confidence. So we feel like we can do things better, not just that particular exercise. So if we've experienced a runner's high, we don't only feel confident that we can run, but that carries over into other portions and other patterns in our life of self-confidence. It can lower symptoms of mild depression. So that is something that cannot be done in another natural way. And so exercise, specifically cardiovascular exercise, is important. And it also can improve our sleep. Now, there is lots of research out there about when we should do cardiovascular exercise, how often we should do that before sleep, or how many hours before sleep, and how hard we should work out before sleep. So that's another topic for another day, but it can improve our overall sleep for cardiovascular exercise. Now, resistance training is anything where we are moving a force against a load against a force. So anytime that we're lifting up heavy things, it doesn't necessarily have to be weights in the gym. It might be our kids or our grandkids or boxes or groceries, anytime that we're doing any sort of resistance training. If we can do that at a moderate intensity, so we're not doing it to exhaustion, but we're doing it at a moderate intensity, that gives us the best effects on anxiety. So all of those happy chemicals that are released in the brain that we talked about at the beginning can help us fight depression, can help us fight anxiety, help us to deal with our stress, make us more resilient. So strength training at a moderate intensity is one way to do that. There is some research out there. I don't think the jury has been finalized yet, but the jury is still out on its effect on cortisol. So cortisol is contributes to inflammation, and so there can be some effect there. And like I said, jury's still out, as well as the social aspect. So again, we're coming back to those happy chemicals of oxytocin and that bonding that happens in a social aspect of resistance training. And so the people that you talk to can help contribute to that. And again, improve depression. So these are just a little bit of the effects of exercise on stress. There's a whole host of research out there, and like I said, I'll list some of those at the end, but these are sort of the top ones. Motivation alone right there to be able to do some more cardio, to be able to do some more resistance training. Mindful movement practices. So you probably automatically think of things like yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong and Pilates, but really any movement can be a mindful movement practice. So it's about setting that intention, like we talked about at the beginning, setting an intention for a realistic goal, and then setting an intention for a session by session goal, and then making ourselves do those things so that we have those chemicals that are released. So it can be walking, it can be playing a sport, it can be any exercise. It can simply just be stretching. Now, that's not to say that yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, Pilates, all of those things are definitely mindful movement practices, but any movement can be a mindful movement practice. It's all about the intention that we set. In the same way, yoga can totally be a fitness practice, and there are instructors and there are classes out there that take the mindfulness out of yoga, and it's all about a fitness class. So it can go either way. So it's all about the intention that we set to make this a mindful movement practice. So here are a few references again. If you want to go look up some more of these things, some more of the benefits, dig into the mechanisms of how these things work, then you can check out some of these things. So I believe now that we're going to take some questions. So if you want to type some questions in the chat box, and I'll be able to check those out and answer those. And while we're doing that, I'm going to put this slide up here for our next well-being presentation, which is going to be given by Rhonda Henry on creating a resilient mindset. So you can register there at the website the same way that you registered here. So I'm going to look at some of these questions. Could we get a copy of the PowerPoint presentations? This recording will be going on YouTube. And There was not a handout necessarily for this presentation, but it will be going on YouTube, so you can always refer back to this recording. And again, if you have specific questions that are about you, your workstation, your body, your practice, your life, then go on and request an exercise consult with a fitness specialist on your dashboard, and we'll be happy to meet with you one-on-one, spend an hour with you, and help you sort of make out a plan for what that's going to look like. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Yes, the additional references, absolutely. We can make sure that those are listed or send them out in the email that that you registered for. So just like you got that reminder email this morning, we can send out a list of those. Yep, good question. All right, it looks like that might be all of them. You can always email them in if you think about something later. Email us at healthandwellness, spell it all out, healthandwellness@email.uky.edu, and we'll make sure and get those questions answered.